Welcome to a Faithful God podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Rotzel, and today on the show, I'm welcoming back April Leigh from Chronically Me as she shares her experience with human trafficking. So grab those earbuds and your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Hi, friend. Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have you here. I am welcoming back April Leigh in today's show, and we are going to talk about, she's going to share her experience with human trafficking today. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and all month long I've been bringing you guests just to help you just be more aware of what's going on around you, and again, in every community across the world. I just want you to understand that even if the anti-trafficking movement is not your mission field, that every single one of us needs to be aware of what's going on. As we have talked about in previous episodes, this person, someone who is being trafficked could be standing beside you in the grocery store. They can be in your own gated communities. They are not just living in, what am I trying to say? That they are not just living in, these impoverished areas. Human trafficking is happening again in every community around the world. And so I think it's really, really important not to strike fear in ourselves as, we go out and, maybe don't want to leave the house because of how frightening it can be, but just to be aware so that we can help prevent human trafficking from happening to anyone we know and love. So friend, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. On with my conversation with April. Hi, April. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know April, she was on just recently, and actually I should have looked that up, but I will put that in the show notes, the show that she was on. It wasn't too awfully long ago, as you shared your chronic illness journey with us. But if you will, tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of go into your story and stuff.
Okay. Well, my name is April Leigh. I started Instagram as April Leigh Chronically Me to share basically like my life and my faith and my illnesses, and to bring awareness and support for other people. And then the YouTube channel that I have is Hope, Faith, and Thriving, that I started just because the Lord said, sit down and just start talking and sharing my life. And what brought me to do all of this is when you see other people and they're talking about their life, you relate to them, and it brings these invisible things to life. And you feel kind of like part of something and supported and all of that, just by knowing that someone else is struggling with what you're struggling with. So so just to bring hope and encouragement to people through that. And I'm a mom, and I have 2 kids, and I'm married. I have a husband, and just living life and with illnesses.
Yep. And you know what? You're doing such a great job. And I love that you said that, about just supporting people, because it is so true. When you're going through a chronic illness, when you have a chronic illness and trying to live with it, it really is helpful to just to have that support and to see someone else, that you are not alone in your journey, that you are, the same things that you're feeling. You're not crazy. You haven't lost your mind, because after a while, that's what we kind of think is, is this really true? Is this really happening? That kind of thing. But the things you're doing is just really incredible. And you are in my feed all the time on social media and on YouTube as well. I'm starting to see you in my feed there too. So kudos to you. And I just appreciate you stepping up and your willingness to walk in obedience and do what the Lord is telling you and allow Him to work through you. So, but you have another story. So this is, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And you have a story of human trafficking. And so, yeah, let's dive into that. If you will share, my biggest thing is, and I tell our listeners all the time, is I know that not everyone is called to the mission field of the anti-trafficking movement. However, I believe with my whole heart that everyone needs to be aware of it, because it is happening in every community across the world. This is, for these people to say, just as a matter of fact, when this airs, just last week, I had someone on who is from Williamsburg, and she's fighting the anti-trafficking movement through a fair trade business that she owns. And in Williamsburg, most people around the country know Colonial Williamsburg, whether they've been there or not. And it's a very affluent community, but there is human trafficking going on in Williamsburg. So it is not, and it's happening in gated communities and such. So I just think it is so important to bring this awareness, not to bring fear to people to where they don't want to go outside their home, but to bring awareness, because we all have people in our life that are vulnerable and that could, I don't know the word to say, but that could be affected by human trafficking. Yeah. And so that's why it is my passion to bring awareness to this. So if you will, just go ahead and start wherever you are comfortable. I'll chime in if it's okay, with any questions that I have, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay. So, trying to think back. So I'm 43 and this happened. I was 19. What happened was I wanted to be a singer, and I had looked there was not as much online stuff to look for that. So I had found a paper in my town and it had an ad, and it said looking for co-ed singers. So like boys and girls for this group. And at this time, like boy bands were popular, girl boy bands were very popular. And my dream was to sing. And like, I was one of those people that if you saw me on a show or something and they're like, if I don't get this, like, I'll die. Like, it was everything within me was desiring to do that. And like, it was my life's mission to be a singer. So I went in very blindly. I didn't go in thinking like, oh, someone's going to get me, or this is going to be a Lifetime movie.
Who would think that? Yeah.
No. So I saw an ad and I answered it. I called the person. It was a guy answered the phone, and he tells me that he is part of a group. He's one of the singers out of the girls and guys, and they're looking for another member for their band, and that they have a manager, and that this is going to go like really far, and they have opportunity, and they're looking for someone. So he said, okay, so we have, some people in mind, but we need to get to know you a little bit, because we'll be working together a lot. And eventually, like if you end up moving closer and we do all this stuff, we need to know each other. So I was like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. So
and
we start talking.
These things, I'm sorry to interrupt, but all these things that you're saying are not like, why would you think anything differently? I mean, in a newspaper,
like, oh, you want to get to know me? You're a creep. Like,
it was because that's very valid in order for you to become bandmates and band members with these people. I mean, so none of this is crazy out of like that.
I know.
Most of us would think. So I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, that's okay. Yeah. So I answer the ad and we start talking on the phone, and eventually I'm telling my mom, she's like, who are you talking to? And I would, tell her like, I'm talking to this person with this, whatever, this group. And, she's probably like, just don't give him any personal information. And, she was busy. I'm one of 4 siblings. She had other kids, and, she wasn't like, get off the phone, hang up now. But she was like, definitely like, please be careful. I don't know who this guy is, whatever. And so we start chatting, and he starts like learning about my life and asking me questions and stuff, and like personal things about my life, like my home life and my dreams and desires and passions and like good and bad and whatever. And so we start talking, and over time, he starts, it's this conversation of like, I'm going through this. Oh, me too. And, I'll tell him something else. He's like, oh, me too. And so they call it mirror imaging of a personality. So he was basically like listening to me, getting to know me, everything about me, and then pretending to be just like me, so that I would pour into him and then feel like very connected and like, wow, like there's this connection and you understand me and you get it. And why would you hurt me? I mean, just trying to earn my trust through, basically false identity. And so after a while, I told my parents like, oh, we want to meet and whatever. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And finally they were like, well, okay, well, if he's willing to set it up or we can all meet together or something, or you meet in a safe place. So after like, I think we talked for like 6 weeks or something, like a lot, like throughout the week, he would call me and talk to me and get to know me and stuff. And so at home, I didn't have like, it wasn't an amazing home life. There was a lot of like turmoil in my parents and stuff. And like, I was a mess and I was just like not emotionally stable and like, on a good path. So like, I was just going with the flow of whatever, And so, anyway, I talked to my parents and he agreed to like set up a time to meet. So I, at the time, was working across the street at, Universal Studios. And he was like, oh, well, I can meet you at the TGI Fridays across the street, And so my parents were like, all right, just make sure like there's lots of people around. You can meet real quick. If there's other people there, it's whatever, they were okay with that. And so I did meet him and he brought a man and a woman with him. They were probably like, I don't know, very early 20s or late teens or something like that. And we go into the restaurant, we start talking. And I was like really nervous because it's like strangers, of course, but like I felt like I kind of knew the guy because, we were talking all this time. So I was like, okay, he's on my side. He's here for me. He just wants me to really be in this band. And so the guy and the girl, I'm trying to talk to them. They're not really saying a whole lot. And I'm like, do you want to hear me sing or something? And they're like, oh, well, go ahead. And so I'm sitting there in the middle of TGI Fridays, like singing away. And they're like, oh, you're so good, whatever. And, I'm just so naive, and it's like, you just want to hear what you want to hear. I mean, it could be an axe murderer. And I'm like, okay, he's going to make me a star, I don't know. So I'm sitting here and I didn't have any instincts of like, I'm in a dangerous situation, but I knew like, all right, I had some guards up, but not a lot because I just wanted to believe what I wanted to believe. So they left. I went home. Everything's fine. So they drove up all the way from Miami to do this. Okay. And so they go home and like, we start talking on the phone and he's like, oh, they really liked you. And I really like you. But like over time, over like maybe a few weeks, he was like, well, we have a manager and like one of the guys in the group, like found someone else and like, they're going to go with them if like, we don't meet with you. So so my parents were like, no way. Like you're not driving to Miami by yourself, whatever. Yeah. And so their guard was like way up, of course they have good instincts in their parents. So they're concerned. Right. So they agreed, they got him on the phone. He gave them a fake name, a fake address, fake everything, fake phone number, all that stuff. And they agreed to allow me to meet with him and them. And they're like, fine, you want this so bad, April, we'll meet with you. Yeah. So it was like during the day, I don't know what, for some reason, like I had nothing else going on. And so he called me and he was like, oh my gosh, like you got to come today. Like the meeting was supposed to be like in a day or something. And my parents weren't home. I don't know, either working, my dad might've been working, I don't know where my mom was, but he called me and he was like, all right, you have to meet us like today. Cause if you don't, like, they're going to pick this other person and like, it's going to be all ruined and we want you and I want you and whatever. And the manager's coming and like, you got to come like right now. I was like, well, I gotta wait for my parents. And so he put me in this desperate situation where, okay, like you got to come now or else. And I was like, well, I don't have any money. He's like, well, there was like Western Union. I think they still even have that. He was like, I'll send you money. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll send you money. I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, pack some stuff. Like, I remember he did tell me to pack some things and he's like, you stay a while. Cause then he had me convinced there was a 2-bedroom apartment and that eventually if I got chosen, like, cause I'm like, where am I going to live? He's like, well, you could work for the manager in the office and then you could live here. Like all these stupid lies. It's like a made for TV movie. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'll work in the office. I mean, I can't even like type anything and I'm going to work in an office. I'm like, whatever. And so I get in the car and I knew like, I was on adrenaline. So I'm driving on adrenaline. In the back of my head, I'm like, man, I really hope this is real and it's going to work out. I didn't think I was in danger, but I'm like, there's that mild sense of like stranger danger. Like, is this a good idea? But like, I'm just going with it because I want to sing. I got to do it or I'll die. Yeah. And so I went and slowly but surely, like it was not a plan where I meet at the apartment, but it just somehow like all the places I was supposed to meet, it kept prolonging because the woman, which was the manager, so to speak, was supposed to be flying in, and her flight was getting later and later or whatever. So
Right.
he's like, well, finally I pull up to the apartment. I'm in the parking lot, and he's like, well, you got to, I'm like, I'll wait out here and we'll meet, whatever. And he's like, no, just come on in, get something to drink, whatever. It's like, okay. So I go up, and I'm like, at this point, I was not excited to go up in there, but I felt like I knew him enough. And I was like, all right, well, I'm probably okay. And like, someone will be here eventually. And like, what could happen? I didn't think about it. I mean, honestly, like a lot could have happened that did not, thank God. But so I go in, I remember going right in and putting whatever I had down on a table or something and sitting down, and he got me some water. And at this point, during this time, I was, I don't know if you would call, I'm thinking like almost mildly anorexic, because I was very, I needed something to control, because I felt like my life was chaos. So I wasn't eating a lot. Wasn't really nourished that much. So like my thinking wasn't that great. And so like, if you were going to drug me, it would be really easy. So, so I'm sitting on the couch. He gives me this water, which later I found out there was drugs in the water. So he gives me this water, and we're just chatting and stuff. And like, he keeps pretending like the phone would ring, and he's like, oh, they're going to be later and later and later. Meanwhile, he's like, she's going to be like super late. So everybody's going to like be downtown. We'll go meet him downtown. Let's go downtown. So I'm starting to feel kind of like weird and loopy. And I'm thinking, oh, it's just because like, I'm not eating. Like I ate like a few crumbs a day. That's what I was living on. And so, he gets me in the car, and we get to the gas station. He gives me he's like forcing me to drink orange juice. He's like, you need orange juice. Go feel so much better. And little did I know that I think it's, what is that date rape drug called? No, not GHB.
I don't know. I
whatever
don't know.
It's called. It's the one where you like basically like forget things. Okay. So he was giving me that. I didn't know. And the orange juice, apparently they found out later, like it kind of, for some reason, like vitamin C might accelerate that or something like that to make it more effective. So so I start feeling worse. And then we go downtown, we park somewhere, and we get out, and like and before this, so at the apartment, he had, I remember he was like, we were walking around the grounds of the apartment, and he was talking to me about my body. And I was like, what are you like? He's like, cause I was so thin, and he was like, oh, like you should work out and like thicken up in here and do this and that. And like, he's like, you kind of look like more like an Alicia Silverstone. Like maybe we should lighten your hair more. I'm like all this stuff. And I'm like, what? Cause I'm thinking, he's like, well, no. I'm like, I'm questioning him. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why? And he's like, well, no, because of like the band. And he's like, this is what's popular in pop music. And like, you got to be like appealing in this way. And this is like going to be like your look and whatever. I'm like, okay. I didn't think about it. Right. So then we're walking downtown. He's got his arm around me, kind of like if you were escorting like someone, just escorting them around, not in a gentleman way, but like holding on to them, like moving them around. And meanwhile, I'm kind of like, it's like I've drank, because I'm starting to feel loopy and off balance and a little, I'm like, oh, where am I? Whatever, but enough to walk. And I just remember, and I haven't been downtown since, and I don't know where I was, but there were like some of the, like, it was like you're walking on a downtown like sidewalk, and you've got these stores on the side with these little, just few steps kind of going up. And there was a man at the front. It was the strangest thing. There was a man at the front of each store front, like standing there. And I thought, that's so weird. And so I look up, and they're like going like this or like this. And I'm like, what is that? And then I'm like, why are you escorting me? Oh, I'm just being a gentleman. I'm so out of it. So I remember seeing this, and I was like, that is so weird. So he walks me down the sidewalk. Okay. And all these men, one man at each one, you have to go like this or like this. And little did I know that basically, I'm guessing they were his like customers, and they were like, no, she's not right for us. Or yes, she's right for us, for their freaks that wanted a woman for money. And so I get back to the apartment. It's getting late. And I remember he's like, oh, they're not gonna be here till tomorrow. And then I've got more of whatever's in me, and I'm not really thinking, and I'm all excited about meeting this lady. And he's like, oh, just stay over or whatever. And I fall asleep. And then I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like sick. And I've never done well with medicine. I've never taken a drug in my life, and I don't do well with drinking. I have 2 glasses of wine, I'm like going to throw up and I'm sick. I don't do well with that. So I go to the bathroom and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm sick. What's wrong with me? I'm not really aware of where I'm at. I know where I am, but like, I'm not really like, it's like you're on a drug and you can't really like, you think about it. You're like, oh, you're not in your right mind. So I'm in the bathroom. I start throwing up and I'm shaking and quivering and like freezing and trembling. And I get into a bath. I was like, maybe I'll just sit in this bath water. So I fill the bath water and then I pass out and I start going under the water and I like wake up because I'm like falling asleep in bath water. And I'm like, what is going on? And then all I can think is I'm embarrassed. I must be like, I'm like throwing up and like sick as a dog. And like, I just want to meet this person the next day. And this guy's going to think like, I don't know what he's going to think. And I'm just freaking out. And then, so he ends up, we get ready the next day. I don't even remember all the little steps, but all I know is I'm getting ready. And before I get ready, I did in the apartment and like, I would go get something to drink or something like that. He kept bringing me, he's like, no, let me make it for you. So he kept making my drinks, my water. So I was, noticing in the kitchen, these back in the 90s, there were, if you were in the 90s, you'll notice that like if you went to a Walmart or a store or something, there was these photo booths. You take a photo and it left like most wanted or some weird sketch out, you know? And so I noticed these in his kitchen. They were all over the place. So these women, and it said like Fluffy and Red Velvet and all these weird names. And I was like, who are these people? And he was like, oh, they're my cousins and whatever. I was like, and I'm out of it. On whatever he's got me on. But at the same time, I'm thinking like, what? I did not put it together. I'm just thinking he's like a weirdo and has a bunch of girlfriends or something. And I'm like, this is so strange. I'm like, they can't be your cousins. It's just weird. But I just, as I said, I go to make a thought. And when I was going to make sense, I couldn't really go with it because I was like on drugs. So he gets me all ready. I remember being very excited and very nervous. I'm going to go meet his manager. He drives me to this office building. I'm trying to like imagine it. Like I remember pulling up, he drove me there and like we walk across the street to like this, like some sort of, I remember it was a white building. I don't remember anything else, but it was like near an industrial area and there was an office building there. We go inside. I remember, I think I went in an elevator to a certain floor and it brings me to this like waiting area. And then there's like different rooms. And so she calls me in to her office. She's got an actual office. Okay. She must have rented maybe for the day or maybe all the time. I don't know. And so she's behind a desk. She's a little burly lady and with like dark black or brown hair. And I cannot remember her face, but I just remember her sitting at this desk and she was very intimidating because she was just like, I don't know. She was very aggressive and like, wasn't like a sweet woman, like looking at us like, oh, we look very sweet and kind, but she was like kind of rough and tough. And I'm real nervous. I'm just sitting there and I was like, wanting to impress this manager that I thought she was. And all she wanted to talk about was like, okay, so like, we're just going to choose you. You're great. And you can work in the office. You can live in the apartment, blah, blah, blah. And then I find out because I'm already in the apartment, only has 1 bedroom. So I'm thinking, where am I going to be going? And I was so excited. So I go, do you want to hear me sing? Oh, well, sure. You know, I sing 2 notes. She's like, oh, great. You know, I'm not even thinking of this. And so she's like, so we're going to get everything set up. You work in the office. You're going to like go home, like go to this apartment. You're going to write music. We're going to like supply your income. And then like, you're going to get signed. And, you know, back then you get signed. It just means like you start recording and they pay for you to live and whatever. And it was like in a dreamland. I don't know what I was thinking. And so I leave and I'm like all excited because I'm now going to be in this band with these guys and girls, which were most likely that because he had to pay them. So I think they were like drug dealers and probably a hooker. I don't know. So anyway, go back to the apartment. And I remember just starting to sit down and thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to like tell my parents, like I'm not coming back and I'm gonna be here and this is my life and whatever. And I'm in and out of it and I'm feeling so sick. Like I have like the flu or something. And I remember writing songs and like coming up with stuff and like telling him, I'm like, aren't you going to help me? He's like, oh, you do it. You're fine. You're fine. And then suddenly it was the next day. So I was there like all that first day and then all this second day into like, it was getting into nighttime and my mom had called. So my uncle was in the Orlando Police Department and he somehow by the aliases that was given to my mother figured out a way to find out like wherever he lived, like one of the names, and somehow it connected, and they got the phone number to his place, not a cell phone or anything, just his phone number. And he goes, "It's your mother." So the guy looked like a deer in headlights. And he was like, "How the heck did she get my number? I gave her all the wrong ones because I'm a freak." And so I answer, and I'm like, "Hi, Mom." And she's like, "April." Like her voice was like, and when she gets like this, I know like I'm in trouble,
There's
you know,
something.
like, and she's like, "Listen, your uncle checked him out. Like, this is not good. Like, you need to get out of there. You need to do whatever you can to get out of there because this is very, very bad. We don't know what's going to happen to you." And I'm like, "What? I'm fine," you know, and thinking like, what? And she's talking to me. She's like, "No, like, it's really serious." I'm like, and then I freak and get like paralyzed, and like I turn into this situation of like, where am I? I'm writing songs and this is all going to be dandy, to like, oh no, like survival mode. And like, I start thinking clearly. And then I remembered that I'm like, what can I do to get out of here where he's going to believe I'll come back? And he knew, thank God. See, this is where God comes in. God sees so many steps before you. Even though the enemy had all this stuff planned for me, he used that evil stuff that the guy was trying to pry from me to help me out of a situation. So the man knew all about me, my grandfather. Of course, I poured my life into him, and my grandfather was like my everything. And I told him that, I was like, I instantly said, "Oh my gosh, my grandfather's sick. He's in the hospital. I have to go." And I started like crying and freaking out and just panicking and trying to like grab whatever I could find of my own and get out of there. And I was like, "I'll be back. Don't worry. Like, I'll try to be back like tomorrow, whatever." And he's like trying to like get me to stay aggressively, but without being violent or like frightening me. So he's like, you know, "Oh no, you can't go. No, you got to stay here. Don't you go anywhere, whatever." And so I keep like inching my way to the door and thinking like, "Oh God, please don't like keep me here." Like I'm thinking of, you know, NYPD Blue or something. And so, I finally get to the door and he's like shutting it, trying to keep me there. And I was like, no, I'll come back. I'll be back. You don't understand. Like, you know how my grandfather, I'm so close, and like all this, and I'm putting on the works, you know, trying to get out of there alive. And I didn't know what he had planned for me till later. I'll get to that. So I get out the door and he's like at the steps. He's like, "But no, stay, like, don't leave. He'll be fine, whatever." And so I finally get to the car and he's at the window and he's like, "But you come back and make sure you come back. Make sure you call me, whatever." And I'm driving. I get on 95 and I'm driving like, I don't even know how I got home. Like, I feel like the Lord like drove my car because I'm just sitting there and I am paralyzed in fear and I'm like traumatized, thinking like trying to process what happened. Meanwhile, I'm detoxing. I'm so sick. I just want to like puke because I'm detoxing from whatever he gave me. And I'm driving like a maniac and straight home. I get home and my parents are like shaking me, like asking me those questions. I want all the answers. And I'm just like, oh, you know, I'm so sick. And I was like, I just feel so sick. I feel so sick. And so because I was so sick, they let me go to bed and I wake up and I'm like throwing up and I'm sick. And they're like, "What is going on? They must have maybe drugged you or something." So then I remember, I don't know where I went exactly, but I know I went to some hospital, probably my local one, and they got me checked out, make sure everything's okay, make sure like I wasn't like abused or something in some sexual way or whatever. And thank God that did not happen. But they did test me and they said that they couldn't tell what, but most likely it was, I think it's called GHB. Hopefully that's not a supplement. It's the date rape drug. That's all I know. And so I go home after that and like it's taken me a few days to kind of feel back to normal. And then I'm starting to remember things. I'm thinking like I'm dreaming, but they were real things. And so I start talking to my mom and she's like, "Oh my gosh, April, that doesn't, you know, that doesn't sound right. It sounds like he was going to prostitute you or something." I'm like, "What?" And I'm still, I'm so naive. I'm just like, what? Like I'm trying to piece it together. So I start telling my dad, and my dad drives me all the way down to the county I remember talking to a detective in some police department or something, and they start asking me questions. So I start naming things that I remember. I was like, well, number one, I remember sitting in his apartment. It was like freezing cold and he was like trembling a lot. And I was counting money, like tons of money on like he had me sitting at a coffee table, like counting all this money. It was really cold. And they were asking me about him, and they're like, he most likely was probably on crack or something because that's what happened. Like you're hot. and then you're shaking, and then this is like the characteristics, and then you're counting money. He's like, so then they're trying to piece things together. They're like, what else do you remember? I was like, well, I saw these pictures of these women, and I named like Red Velvet and this and that. He looks them up. He's like, these are prostitutes. And then they try to do some connection, and I'm describing the guy, but I don't remember, like, because obviously he had fake names. So I give him information, and they track him down, like, oh, well, he's a drug dealer, and he's a pimp. He pimps out women. And so he's like these girls right here were homeless. And he's like, then suddenly now we're arresting them for prostitution. So obviously, like, he's doing different angles. He's looking for like girls who want to be something, because girls that want to be pop stars or models or something usually are putting effort into their appearance, and they are so like driven that they put every clear thought aside, and they're desperate. And he's so clever in his evil schemes that he's like, let me go that angle. So he, put in the effort of gas and driving and time. Yeah. Just imagine what kind of money he would have made on destroying my body and my dignity and my, mind and spirit, And so anyway, so long story short, they found out that he was a drug dealing pimp. They didn't know much more, but they didn't have enough evidence connected to me, even though I knew this, like there was no evidence on my body. It was like really hard to track things. And back then, like you can't trace a call, like they didn't know. And so they just had to go by what I said. And we kept in touch, and they said, we really need to get him on drug charges more than anything, because that's more longer standing of like getting arrested and like it making a difference. And the lady, they looked her up, and she was on parole for having a brothel. So that was, I mean, my goodness, like it's crazy the effort that these people put in to factoring and trafficking a human being for the sexual pleasure of a freak. Yeah. It's crazy. And so the reason I want to share this, I felt led to share with you, is that these angles, like, they're just not like seen on TV experience. These are real. Like, I was just a regular person answering an ad of something that seemed very innocent. The man like lured me in by getting to know me and mimicking my personality, earning my trust, and then slowly leading me breadcrumbs to this horrible thing. And, the Lord rescued me from that situation. It could have been so much worse, but I believe that, and there's people, they were trafficked, like, and lived it. And I do pray, I really hope they find healing, and the Lord can like deliver them from that, because I can't even imagine. But my experience, I feel like, the Lord allowed it to get to a certain point, because it will rescue someone who is at that point or going to be led there, to let them know, like, this is another avenue. So you're talking 20 something years later, you've got kids on the internet, on internet gaming. You have them on their cell phone. Okay. And then you also have like friends going to school who are trafficked at home. Yeah. Bringing their friends to sleepovers. Yeah. I mean, there's every kind of angle. So coming, from a Christian side, there's so much evil. Okay. And it's really easy for the enemy to go on in there and try to get to the children in the most deceiving ways you could imagine. Just imagine, because like my son, he'll want to go do something alone. I'm like, honey, you can't do that. Why? Well, because XYZ. Like, you have to think. You don't have to tell your kids why, but you've got to think Lifetime movie, out of the box, what could happen? Because if you're not thinking that, someone else is, and your kid could be susceptible to something crazy like that. So, sleepovers, I make sure I bring kids in my house. There's like one person I trust, and that's it. I mean, you just don't know when your kids are out of your home during the day, during the night, at any time. There's risk. Even with your own family, you don't know what, your cousin Bob's doing, or Sally, or whoever. You really have got to be you need to take your kids and cherish them like they are precious gems, because they're gifts from God. you need to, watch over them like a hawk, and you don't have to instill fear, but realize that there's so much stuff lurking out there. And if you are not aware of it, you may miss something, and your kid could be a victim of something horrible. And for me, I was very fortunate. There's a lot of people that are still stuck in these situations. And another thing too, what they do is they use the people in the situation to lure in other people. So you've got high school boyfriends, or, oh, let me be your boyfriend. And then they're going out on dates and meeting other people, and then trafficking these girls, their own girlfriend or whatever, or pimping them out, and they go home to their family and they don't say anything. Because of they've been taught in fear. This is not just movie material. This is real life.
Yeah. So it truly is. And that's something that I think is so important for people to understand is, again, this is the fastest growing criminal activity in the world, bringing in $150 billion a year. $150 billion a year. And in the US, because human trafficking looks different in every culture, in the US, a situation like what happened with you, April, that is the most common, not that people aren't trafficked in other ways, but that is the most common form of human, or the most common way that these traffickers get their victims, is they spend time grooming them. And to see what they were able to do with you through a newspaper ad, think about, just like you said, these kids have phones now. These kids are on the gaming systems. These kids are being trafficked through here. And what it is they're being groomed, and they will spend, like with you, weeks and months, sometimes 6 months, to groom you and get you to know,
it's an investment,
and trust them. Exactly.
It's a financial investment for them.
Yep, it is. And they are so, I hate to give them credit, but the thing that, like you said, they're so clever. They are so smart at what they do. They are very savvy, and they know how to work it. And like you said, the sad thing is so many of these kids, number one, so many kids who are being trafficked right now are going home every night. And, no one knows. Their parents don't know. So these kids are being trafficked. And unfortunately, then once they start being trafficked, once they become a victim of human trafficking, I hate to say victim, and I hope I didn't say that in an unkind way, because I don't mean that. But these kids are then forced, like human trafficking is force, fraud, or coercion. These kids are being forced into recruiting other
that's
kids.
Why they want you home. They want you out. I don't know the statistics on how many people are like held, hostage, but they're using new ways. There's another example. Someone had told me that there was an organization. They called themselves an organization. They went around with flyers to very fancy gated communities. They got in and they tried to market, your children, this will look good on there. If they do this community service with our program, we'll come pick them up. We'll take them to do these services. They'll get checked off. It'll be great community service. And they've got a whole organization and everything that they run. It's a front so that they can, their kids go home. And because they have so much money, they're like, oh, we're going to, take all your parents' money. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill your parents. We're going to do whatever. They're coming home.
Yeah.
And they're going out and being basically prostituted or abused or whatever in every way, boys and girls. And then they come home. I could not even, and this was like, somebody told me this like 6 years ago. I could not believe it. I'm like, what? You would never think. You would never think such a thing. You've got to be careful. And I know, if someone's listening to me like, oh yes, I protect my kid. I mean, yes, I'm sure you do, but I mean, seriously, in these days we live in, like, you need to be on their cell phone.
Yes.
The other day, another child that was just a random kid that was friends with some other friend had just showed my daughter something very, inappropriate, like through their little thing they were doing. My daughter's phone is protected. Okay. But it allowed her to like, oh, look, what I found, to her, it's silly, but like, it was not silly. It was vulgar and, very inappropriate. And my daughter's like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that, So, in the schools, they're like, all this stuff is brought on to them and told to them by other kids that are not being observed. And even when you think you're a hovering parent and you're flipping through that phone and you see it all, you don't know. I mean, somebody could text your kid something. They see it real quick and delete it or anything, or they're on, this is another avenue. They're on gaming and they're like, oh, they're listening to them and like, send me V-Bucks and I'll send you V-Bucks if you send me a picture of your sister, or send me a picture of your private area, or send me a picture of your cell phone, or send me a picture of your address. Or these kids are like, oh, sure. Like, they don't know. They're like, oh, I'll send whatever. And they're innocently doing this because they're like, oh, I'm going to get this reward, or they're going to earn their trust. And, I had a situation with my son, as much as he knows better. Somehow he, and he's, can't just talk to anyone, just local friends and stuff like that, but somehow got connected with some other person. And it was very innocent. It was just another kid got his phone number and started texting him like, who's this? Like, oh, a friend on whatever. I'm like, sorry, whether the friend's good or not. I found out the kid's like 12. Like, you can't, I'm sorry. So I deleted the kid's number. I'm like, you cannot do that again. So he knows better. I'm like, if they say anything other than this game is great, like, you cannot have a conversation. Oh, what's your favorite color? What's your this, what's that? You cannot. And I tell my kids about my situation. My kids are going to be 11 and 13. And I don't get into details, but I tell them. And I had other close calls, and spiritually speaking, whatever the enemy couldn't do to you, he just wants to go to that and do that much further. So if you were at a close call, for me, I got to protect my kids spiritually from these things and have that wisdom, and I have to let them know, like, all right, this is what almost happened to me. We're going to be extra careful with you. And, you can think I'm a terrible hovering mother, whatever. I love you. And it's not happening to you. Not in my time. So
I know I said that in an episode, a few episodes back. I said the same thing. I said, look, I realize I'm probably going to get some hate mail on this or some ugly comments about it, but you've got to know, you've got to, that phone that your child has is not that should not be something that should be kept private to only them. Like, you need to know what's going on. And the thing is there are so many kids that have fake Instagram accounts. So that way, then they can get in. Like, Instagram is a very big platform for, now, don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing Instagram. I don't mean that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, there are lots of great things about Instagram, but again, these traffickers are so smart and they are so clever, and they see what the kids are using, the gaming systems, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. And they're so smart, and they spend so much time grooming and preparing these kids to make them feel like they can be trusted. And so, and of course they're going to do that. Why wouldn't you, after spending 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, talking to someone who loves the same things you do, who has the same interests you do, has the same dreams you do. And of course they're going to do that, but we've got to be aware of this. And the kids, there have to be conversations like what you said, they don't need to know details, but they need to know, hey, if you see something like this, if someone approaches you or, comes through your phone or through the gaming system and says this, this, and this, or says something that you just feel is a little different, because see, what they're going to do is they're going to push the envelope just a smidge, like just a little percent here. Right. And then the next time they're going to do it just a little bit more. Hey, send me a picture of you so I can see what you look like. And then next time, it's a little bit more and it's a little bit more. So the kids then don't see that they are compromising. How am I trying to say this? It's happening so small, so gradually that the kids don't even realize it's happening. And hey, the kids, sometimes as adults, we wouldn't realize that's happening, right?
No. And so, I was 19.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You weren't doing anything wrong other than you were out there. This was a dream that you had. You've got a beautiful voice that God gave you and to share with the world. But again, Satan is Satan is evil, and what, he's going to get in and take those gifts, and he's going to try to do something different with it. And these traffickers are so smart. And I don't like to give them credit like that, but it's the truth. And the truth is, drug trafficking, they sell their product one time. And I know that's a heinous way to think of a human being. And I, believe me, I agree with that 100%. But a drug trafficker sells their product one time. A human trafficker makes so much more money on each person because they sell their product, they sell that person again and again and again. And they do vile, heinous things to people. It's not okay. It's not okay. I want to, and that's something that I mean, kind of going along with those, I was taking notes as you were talking and stuff, but it is, you were talking about, well, when you said a couple of times, I just didn't know these were the things, it is our basic need. Like, we were created to want to feel loved, to want to aspire, right? God created us with dreams in our hearts. So having that dream, having those basic needs isn't a bad thing. But again, it goes back to the trafficker, who is so smart, who knows how to step in and twist that, right? We know Satan, what he does is he twists the truth. He twists things that God meant for good. Yeah. And so that's what these traffickers are doing. They twist and they make you feel like they're going to give you the life you have always wanted, the life you are dreaming of, the love that you are wanting. And so it's so important for, people to understand that every person, there's not a single one of us that isn't vulnerable. Now, I understand that there are some that are more vulnerable than other. I don't want to degrade that at all. I don't want to come across as, oh, we all have the same vulnerabilities. I'm not saying that. But when with human trafficking, the statistics show again and again and again, the more vulnerabilities a child has, the easier it becomes, because they have that basic need in them.
Yep. And they also look, so another thing, because he got to know me, and I think, let's just say he got to know me, and I was questioning him, and I had an amazing family and I had no desperation. He probably would have been like, you're good. But that does not mean that he would have gave up. Now with me, I was and here's the thing, if you're in a position, if your child's in a position where you, they are sad and bullied and not accepted, they're going to be even more so grabbing onto anything and anyone that's going to love them. And if they let anyone know that, then they're going to that guy, I want that kid, or that woman or whatever. I mean, this happens to older women, younger women, boys, girls, men. I mean, I don't know. I can't, I don't even want to know. I don't follow this. I just knew that this was something that you were, trying to bring awareness to. And I realized that. I was like, you know what, let me just tell you that. And, I hope that, whoever watches this, if they've gone, had to live that life, I really pray that, you have freedom and healing, because, it doesn't matter how far, the enemy goes with you, what the Lord can rescue you from blows my mind. Yeah, it really does. Amen. And my heart goes out. I really does. I mean, he did rescue me from what could have been. And there's other situations in my life that I had to really suffer, and he rescued me from those and brought so much healing and forgiveness. And I've seen so many stories of, women on TV talking about it, and after they've been in it for years, and how God had healed them, and it just renewed them. And I mean, it seems impossible, but nothing's impossible with God. So if you're watching this and think oh, this girl, she doesn't, she didn't go as far as what happened to me and all of that, just know that there are people out there that the Lord has restored and renewed. And I pray that for you. I really do.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you are
Amen.
not saved or a Christian, that you reach out and ask him to do that, because he's willing and he's faithful to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your willingness to share, and because I know this isn't an easy
Mm-mm.
thing to talk about. It's not. And I just, yeah, I'm just so grateful for you for sharing and helping us just bring awareness to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Just again, that's my goal for my listeners, is just to be aware that this is happening. And I think it is every one of our, just like you said too, um,
Mm-hmm.
you do this in your home. These are the things you take care of in your home to help prevent, right? We can't ever prevent
Yeah.
anything 100%, but we can
No.
sure step up and be aware. And I think that's
Yeah.
the first step. So, well, April, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
I really, really do appreciate it. We appreciate you sharing your story and just the encouragement for those who are living in this, for anyone that is, has survived it and is trying to move on. It's really tough, but I do appreciate your encouragement and stuff. So
Yeah,
thank you
sure.
so much.
You're welcome.
Woo. What a story, right, friend? Man, I honestly don't have a lot of words. It still just blows me away that this kind of thing is happening. And it really blows me away. Like, I had no idea this was happening this many years ago. I'm just going to be honest with you, just be very vulnerable with you. And I just had no idea, but to see the lengths that these traffickers go through. And that's why I'm so grateful for April sharing her story, because I want you to understand the lengths they go through to groom their victims, that this is not something that is happening in other countries. This is happening right here and in the United States. It's happening in every country around the world and every community around the world. And it does look different in each culture. There is and I should have looked this up before I started recording. I am so sorry, but there's a really good documentary if you are so inclined to learning more about the different cultures of human trafficking. It's on Netflix. I believe it is called Trafficked. I'm not quite sure, but it shows just different cultures and what human trafficking looks like in the different cultures. Here in the United States, it's more common that they go home every night. It's more common that they're not, taken from a sidewalk and shoved in a van and kept in a cage in the basement. Not that that doesn't happen, my friend, but it's important for us to understand the culture of human trafficking in our area. And that's my hope and desire, is that this has brought awareness to you throughout the month, that you see that, there are things that we need to have conversations. We need to just be more aware. We need to make sure we are keeping track of what the kids are doing on their phones, not because they're bad kids, not because we don't trust them, but because we need to keep them safe, because these traffickers are so dang smart. I hate to give them that credit. I really, really do, because it is pure evil. But the truth is, right, we talk about this in the community all the time. The best offense is a good defense. And the best offense for human trafficking is being aware of it. I say the best offense. There are many, many ways to fight human trafficking, but one of the ways, and one of the good, the strategic, what am I trying to say? One of the ways, the good offensive ways, I'm struggling with that, I apologize, but to fight it is to be aware, right? It's to be aware of what's going on in our own community. So, friend, I hope that these episodes brought that awareness. I was going to say blessed you. I hope they blessed you in a way that it has made you more aware. I hope they blessed you in a way that if there is someone you think that might be trafficked, I want you to call the National Trafficking Hotline. If you feel like your kids are getting into something that they shouldn't, just to get the help that you need. A21.org is a great resource to help, just to help prevent human trafficking and really learn about it more. I've talked about, sorry about that. I've talked to, throughout this month, we've talked about Rebecca Bender Initiative and all that Rebecca Bender is doing to fight human trafficking and all the ways. And she's got this great course about finding your lane. So talking about all the different ways that you can learn about human trafficking and how to fight human trafficking, because we need people in many different ways. We need people fighting legislation. We need people in awareness. We need people fighting the demand. So stopping the demand for these victims, right? And what I'm talking about is pornography, prostitution, being able to get in there and stop it so that there's no more demand for it. So there are just many different ways. You can go to Rebecca Bender Initiative. I think that is, I'll put it in the show notes. I think it's .org. It might be, I think it's .org. But she's got the Find Your Lane course. She also has the common myths surrounding human trafficking course, which is so important that we understand the myths. Here's the thing, friend. I am still learning. I have so much to learn. I'm honest to goodness, I have just barely broke the surface in what I've learned, and it's not an easy subject. It's a hard subject. It is something that is not okay. I mean, right? We know this is not okay, but it's happening, my friend, and we have to take the blinders off and just be more aware so we can help to prevent anyone that we know and love from becoming a victim to human trafficking. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me this past month in this. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can send me a DM. You can email me at Tammy at footprintsofinspiration.com. And I will make sure I get you hooked up with the right people to give you the answers that you're searching for and the help that you're searching for. So friend, thank you again for joining me. And I will see you back here next week for another episode of a Faithful God podcast.